Thank you, everybody, for coming into the Lightning Talks this afternoon. This Lightning Talk provides the opportunity for two local organizations to share some information on their projects and the relevance to food security here in Ottawa. At the end of both of these presentations, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions, so please pop those questions into our chat box. And as with the previous sessions, simultaneous interpretation is available and the session will be recorded. So please join me in welcoming Marketta Graham, a public health nutritionist and registered dietitian from the Ottawa Public Health. They will be sharing the summary results of this year's Nutritious Food Basket. Welcome as well, Akil Mazwala, founder of the Light of Box and a climate advocate. They created the Box of Light to reshape our relationship with food and rekindle our love for nature in the urban world. I'd like to start off by calling on Marketta to share her presentation. Take it away, Marketta.
So thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me to share the 2022 Nutritious Food Basket findings. Ottawa Public Health, like most public health units, have to pause Nutritious Food Basket survey data collection in 2020 and 2021, and that was due to COVID and a shift in priorities. This year, we have been able to come back and do the survey. This year also, we actually resumed the data collection using a newly validated survey. So all public health units in Ontario actually have implemented this new Nutritious Food Basket data collection tool. So I will start off with just explaining very briefly what Nutrition Basket is and why we use Nutrition Food Basket. The Nutrition Food Basket is a survey tool that is used to calculate the cost of nutritious food diet. The list of foods is set by Health Canada. Nutritious food baskets have a long history for use in Canada at the municipal, provincial, and national levels. Over the years, there have been many different versions of food baskets, and the foods have changed over the time as well to reflect changes in dietary guidance and also food habits. These foods in Nutritious Food Basket represent current nutrition recommendations and average purchasing patterns. So why do we use NFB? Results of the survey are used to monitor both the affordability and also accessibility of food in our city. We relate the cost of the food basket to individual and family incomes. This slide is a summary of some of the changes from the old Nutritious Food Basket data collection tool that was last used in 2019, and we've used it since 2008 or so, and the new Nutritious Food Basket that we have used this year. So the old Nutritious Food Basket used 67 food items. This year, the new tool uses 61 food items. So what happened in 2019, Health Canada has updated the 2008 version of the food basket to be consistent basically with the new Canada's Food Guide that was released in 2019. It was built using the dietary reference intakes, also the nutrient data from the Canadian Nutrient File and national food consumption data in 2015, which is the Canadian Community Health Survey, the nutrition section of that survey. At a provincial level, there were actually a series of activities that were undertaken to create a data tools for monitoring food affordability in Ontario. And as a result, Ottawa Public Health participated in the validation of this new tool. But we, just like other public health units in Ontario, we have implemented this newly validated data collection tool in 2022. And because we are using a new survey this year, we need to be cautious when we are actually interpreting the data and comparing it to the Nutritious Food Basket results from previous years. Some of the key changes that have happened in this year's tool is that because it is based on the new food guide, there's more plant-based foods, more whole grains, less meats, and less sugar and salt. So some of the examples is that this year Nutritious Food Basket includes foods such as tofu, hummus, whole grains instead of white grains, and there really is no space for any sweets or treats like there weren't as many in 2019, but there wouldn't be, for example, cookies and things like that that were in small amounts in the previous surveys. What is not included in the NFB are snack foods such as candy, soft drinks, birthday cakes, any type of expensive meats, convenience and prepared foods, frozen meals. It also does not include culturally specific or religiously mandated foods, such as halal or kosher, for example. The Nutritious Food Basket also does not contain infant formula, for example, special dietary foods such as gluten-free foods. There are no medications or essential personal care products such as toothpaste, soap, dish soap, and so on. So what we have done in Ottawa to select our sample size, there are 104 large grocery stores in Ottawa. And so these are the large grocery chains, but also large grocers. And we selected 14 grocery stores. We paid attention to the geographic representation of the selection, and we also took in consideration the socioeconomic designation of those neighborhoods, so the quintiles, so that we had a nice representation from all those areas. We surveyed 12 urban and 2 rural grocery stores, and we did this survey between May and first week in June. Just as a side note, when we do the costing, basically we are costing 61 least expensive foods. There are 2 surveyors for each grocery store, and then the data is compared and collated so that they're as accurate as possible. We do add 5% to the raw data to accommodate for extra costs related to some of the some components of like miscellaneous foods that are needed in meal preparation, like spices, condiments, or tea, and so on. So what are the results of this year's Nutritious Food Basket? We have found that it costs $1,088 to feed a family of 4 basic, healthy, nutritious foods. A family of 4 would consist of 2 adults and children, one of them being a teenager. As mentioned earlier, we do need to be cautious comparing this data to past years. But as a side note, Nutritious Food Basket that we did, the latest Nutrition Food Basket data that we have done, and that was in 2019, using the original tool, was $901, suggesting that there is a significant increase. Again, regardless of the changes, like we know that there's less meats. Meats are quite expensive. There is a significant jump from those past years. When looking at it for a person living alone, cost of Nutritious Food Basket is estimated at $392. When we are considering a food cost for a person living alone, we do add 20% to the basic data or the raw data of the Nutritious Food Basket, because we know that it is more expensive to live alone other than as a part of a family unit. Again, if I were to bring in the latest data we have from 2019, That year, the cost of a nutritious food basket for a single person was $319 per month. Annually, the local cost of the nutritious food basket plus rent are compared, and we compared this with different household incomes to assess whether income from those sources are adequate to cover the cost of basic necessities. So we basically built, and this is again done across all public health units in Ontario. We built various scenarios to understand the real life situations. So I would like to walk you through one of such scenarios just to demonstrate how these scenarios work. So we'll start off with a scenario where Martin, let's give him a name, Martin, is a 35-year-old male who has recently started relying on Ontario Works. And let's take a look at the numbers. Martin being on Ontario Works, he's now receiving $863 in a monthly income, and that data is provided by Ontario Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. It includes benefits and credits such as the maximum shelter allowance, GST, HST credit, and also Ontario Trillium benefits. When we also factor in the rental cost, we use, he would be paying in Ottawa for a bachelor apartment $1,059. The cost of rent was established using the Ontario Rental Market Report that we can access, and it is a report done by Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. So we basically use the average rent for a bachelor apartment in Ottawa. As we have learned, the nutritious food basket for Martin would be $392 per month. And that basically means that he has no money left, and in fact, he is $588 short in order to cover all these costs. So if Martin were to purchase healthy foods from Nutritious Food Basket, it would cost him $392, and he would be missing $588. So in conclusion, the money Martin receives from Ontario Works is likely going to be prioritized for other necessities like heating, transportation, clothing, and essential personal items. And we have seen such trend over the years of doing Nutritious Food Basket. The results of the Nutritious Food Baskets and survey and income scenarios over years have consistently shown that individuals and families living on fixed or low incomes do not have enough funds remaining at the end of the month to afford the bills whilst also putting healthy food on the table. I would like to invite you to our website, ottawapublichealth.ca/food insecurity. Our website actually has a tab with all other, we have 8 living scenarios on our website that will provide a full picture of what it means to live on in various scenarios. We also have an infographic. There's a snapshot of it on this slide that provides us is a snapshot of also Nutritious Food Basket and some of the and also high-level information on impacts of food insecurity on health. And we also have on our webpage an invitation or sign up for our webinar, which will take a deeper dive into the findings of the Nutritious Food Basket, but also will present information on food insecurity in Ottawa statistics and and more resources and action to be taken. So you can sign up directly from our website through Eventbrite, and the webinar will be using Zoom.
Thank you so much, Marketa. Akil, would you like to share your information with us, please?
Yep, just sharing my screen now.
Thank you.
Just a thumbs up if you can see it.
We can indeed.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. It's been a great session so far. And today, I would like to talk about closing the loop on our food system, because that ties into a couple of very important points that I think addresses food insecurity and climate change. But before we get into that, just want to introduce myself to the people that I don't know in this room. My name's Akil. As an icebreaker, I like to say my favorite dinosaur, which is the T-Rex. And my favorite food, because food connects us all, my favorite food is the dumpling. And I am a newcomer to Ottawa. I moved here in 2018. And then in 2019, I started the Box of Life. And our mission is to create circular food systems to empower people to compost, and by doing so, solve or try to solve the climate crisis. Just last year, we moved into a big space in Little Italy. It is 3,000 square feet manufacturing space, as well as a big wormery at the back. A wormery is a place where I breed earthworms to compost. I'll get into that a bit later. In our space, we host workshops on composting, more tailored towards the urban setting. So I'm not talking about big open piles out in the countryside. I mean compact, efficient, small composting solutions for cities. And we are building this into a community space for sustainability organizations. So the problem I see is that people find composting complicated and icky. The other problem is that when we don't compost and send our food waste into landfill, it releases methane. If we are sending our food waste to the green bin, that's great. But the green bin is a waste management solution, not a soil building solution. Because of the contamination, that compost is not really used to grow any food. And then a consequence of our consumption of fertilizers is that our soil health has decreased. We have about 60 years left of arable topsoil, and that's only 60 crop cycles. We don't focus on soil health, it will result in poor growing outcomes. And as many of you that are gardeners here will know, that if you don't focus on the soil, you'll have diseases, you'll have poor outcomes, and it's just not going to be a fun gardening experience. And it's not your fault, it's the foundations that are incorrect in our soils. So our solution is to use the power of composting earthworms and microbe friends to convert food waste into healthy soil. So a big piece that I find missing is the end of life of food. We're not really focusing on that aspect. People love growing, people love consuming food, but when it comes to dealing with the leftovers, it seems to get neglected. And that's where we fit in. Focusing on earthworms for a residential solution, I think, is a great solution because they're pretty cool roommates. The composting cycle of vermicomposting, if you've never heard of it, takes about 30 to 45 days from start to finish. There are no smells in a worm farm, and composting, when done right, will have no smells, no bugs or flies, and the end product is really great for your plants. And because composting can get challenging, as I've realized, we want to help people build habits. So we've created a lot of infrastructure for our customers to leverage to build that habit. So we have a pretty cool parenting guide, we have online support systems, and we try to do our best to help people compost. I started out the Box of Life with the focus on residential composting because the idealistic person that I am, I thought if everybody can compost at home, then we'd reduce a big chunk of our food waste and start to build soil in our backyards or in our balconies and feed our planet. So for that, I designed the Worm Studio, which is a apartment-sized composting solution that uses earthworms. And it's a pretty simple way to convert your food scraps into soil. But the problem in front of us is bigger than our homes. And so I want to focus a bit more on our larger systems here, which are more apt for community organizations like food banks and food cupboards that deal with larger quantities of food scraps. So here in front of our location in Little Italy, I have a community composter. A community composting model is one where food scraps, instead of being sent away, are converted into compost on site within a localized community, and it's all done in a small box like this. So this is about 3 feet by 3 feet. It's a hot composter, which means that even in the middle of winter, the compost pile is still steaming. I have asked our neighbors from the community to drop off their food scraps and in the bucket that you see on the bottom left. And then it takes me about 1 hour to kind of process everything and feed the composter. I've been doing this for a year and a half now, and I've had no issues whatsoever from neighbors. They're not worried about smells. We're composting, I think, 15 households of food scraps, plus a restaurant nearby that comes and drops off food scraps as well. At the bottom image, you also see our composting bench. Now that's a bench of life, and it's filled with earthworms. That is a pretty cool solution to just lift the lid up, put your food scraps in, close it, and the worms do all the work for you. Unlike in a hot composter where you have to turn the pile, in a worm farm, you don't have to turn the pile. The downside to a worm farm is that when it's cold, the worms unfortunately don't like eating. So they go into a hibernation mode, and you're not composting for about 4 to 5 months of the year. Whereas with a hot composter, you can compost year round. With this community composting model, we want to scale it to community gardens and then tackle food waste in our neighborhood. And as a byproduct of tackling food waste, we get tons and tons of healthy soil. What I would like to do as an organization is to scale up social enterprises. So I heard today that organizations were under pressure of funding, the scarcity model where you're constantly chasing grants. I'd like to flip the switch here and ask the question, can we generate revenues? I see food waste as a wasted opportunity here. One example that I want to give is Social Harvest. They've been a pretty close partner for the last 2 years. We've set up big worm farms at their organization at the Rideau Rockcliffe Center. And then we've started to see the results. So this is worm castings from their big worm farms. They're diverting food scraps from the local food bank that's next door, along with food scraps from the offices that are in the building. And the end product is worm castings that they are now selling. So that's a source of revenue for their operations. And I connected them with my friend that makes seed balls that requires very large quantities of worm castings. And so now we've created this relationship where they can get a steady source of income from there. So if you are a food-based organization that has food waste, or you want to grow healthy food, a composting system is the bridge between the two. So it can create employment because working with soil is really satisfying. It doesn't require too many skills or experience. And it's a great way to bring people, give them a dignified job, which is building soil. It's great for mental health. So whenever I feel stressed and about the climate, especially, I compost. That's my way of just dealing with things. And it gives you a really good focus, especially for people in the winter that can't really garden. Composting is something that you can do year round. The end product of composting is healthy soil. And when you add compost into the ground, you will see much better growing outcomes. So that means faster germination, improved disease resistance, tastier and healthier food. The nutrition value of food is something we don't really talk about. Food grown in chemicals, as Marketa can confirm, is not as nutritious as food grown in healthy soil. And the nutrition value of food can greatly improve if we start to focus on the soil. And so for food banks that want to grow their own food, I think it makes more sense to grow healthy food, right? So that's on the food and healthy soil aspect. And then lastly, if you have large quantities of food scraps, you ask the question, well, it's really expensive to start something like this, or the perception is that it's too expensive to start something like this. But I want to again flip the switch. You are creating compost. Compost is valuable. It is created from resources that are free. Just today, there was a local tree company that was trimming some branches. And so I asked them, hey, can you just drop off some of your wood chips? I'm your neighbor. And that's how I got my carbon for the next 6 months. The benefits. So composting is great for you. It's amazing for your plants, and it is really good for the planet. Now, the planet side of things is something that people don't know of. It is a new science that tells us that if we start adding compost and fixing our soils can start acting as carbon sinks. So if 4% of our farms in the world were to switch over from conventional agriculture to regenerative agriculture that focuses on soils, those farmlands, just 4% of the farmlands, can capture all the CO2 emitted from our planet. And that's the power of soil. So in the food space, healthy soil both tackles food insecurity by helping us grow better, and the overall climate change aspect of it is quite significant. I wanted to keep it short and have more discussion, so I didn't make a very lengthy slide. If you do need to reach out to me, that's my email ID, and you can check out our website at theboxoflife.com. I'm sitting here on unceded Algonquin territory in Little Italy. If you ever do decide to come visit, our shop is open from 10 to 5 most days.
Thank you so much, Akil, for sharing that information with us. We're just going to look and see if we have any questions. If you are thinking of any questions, please put them in the chat from Marketa or Akil, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer those for you. Do we currently have anything in there?
We do have a few questions. Thanks so much, Joanne. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. And please go ahead and enter any additional questions that you might have. I think my first question on the chat here is for yourself, Marketa. Do other Ontario and Canadian major cities do a similar Nutritious Food Basket report? And is this information used collectively to advocate for universal income?
Great question. Public health units in Ontario do conduct Nutritious Food Basket. We collaborate, our public health units collaborate on actually development of the data collection tool so that it's as consistent and evidence-based as possible. So we are the series of activities to validate the survey was done collaboratively. There is a we collaborate also on food insecurity actions. There's like Ontario Dietitians in Public Health, for example, is a group that is supporting a No Money for Food is Senseless campaign, which is basically education campaign on actions that public health units or individuals can take to address food insecurity.
Thank you so much. Our next question says, it's one thing to hear about that our neighbors are experiencing food experiencing anecdotally, food insecurity anecdotally, and another to see the figures. Thank you to you and your team for assembling this. So on the, I guess the flip side, I think what that question is sort of alluding to, is there some stats as well on the cost of not eating a healthy diet or not having access to adequate healthy food as well? So some of the health costs associated with sort of the flip side of that.
Of eating unhealthy foods, absolutely. We know that unhealthy foods increases risk for chronic disease. There's a link with mental health, for example. Also, learning for children. Inadequate breakfast. So that is why supporting school-based healthy eating programs is also so important as part of addressing food insecurity.
Great. Thank you so much. I think Akil, thanks so much, Marketa, to you and your team for all of the fabulous work to put this today together. I'm interested to take a closer look as well. And I think the next set of questions, Akil, is for yourself. So just some comments about how, yes, absolutely, this activity can be really therapeutic. One of the questions that we have is, as we move into the winter months, assuming that the worms would need to be moved indoors, correct? And has the Box of Life been pitched to the City of Ottawa? Perhaps this could be a part of the city's waste management plan.
Yes, the worms would need to be moved indoors if it's in a small box like the ones for the residential solutions, but bigger systems connected to the ground, the worms will hibernate in place. I have not reached out to the city. We'd rather work with organizations like food banks to develop solutions that can be rapidly scaled instead of waiting for, I don't know, months and years for city and the red tape associated with those kind of solutions. So we really are at the ground level. And I heard a lot of talk today about circularity in our conversations and not really doing much. And that's where we come in. We're really here just to do stuff. We just want to compost and implement.
Great, thank you so much. Our next question is, can worms handle meat and dairy scraps?
Yes, worms can eat almost anything except perhaps citrus. But if you're keeping a worm farm inside your house, meats and proteins can really stink when they decompose. So I recommend not adding it. In our outdoor system, because it's in an urban setting, I tell our customers, our volunteers, to not give us meat scraps, because again, if we don't balance the system properly, it can smell. And so because I have so many neighbors across, I just don't want to risk that. And I maybe in the future will accept food scraps that are meat and dairy, but for now, I recommend not adding it. Especially if you're first time composting or if you don't have the hang of it, it can be a bit harder to do that.
Great, thank you so much. Someone here mentions about that there was a program previously. So there was some interest in small local compost systems across the city. So the city had made a commitment to that. Are you aware what happened to that program? Any sort of insights that you might have to be able to share would be wonderful.
So I did have a few people come up to me and say that they started worm farms in the, I think, 90s in Ottawa. Like many first timers that start vermicomposting, the lack of support is a reason why people stop doing it. And that's one challenge we foresaw. And that's why at the Box of Life, we really focus on that community support to make sure that people don't give up. So 30 years from now, I don't want people coming and saying, oh, there was this organization 30 years ago that was doing it. They'll use us in the present tense because of our community. So we'll keep making sure people do it. And once you start doing it, it's pretty easy. With the right motivation from our side, we'll help you build a habit.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I just want to make sure we're keeping ourselves on time and get everybody to our next session. Please join me in thanking both Marketa and Akil today. It was a very interesting, and I know people had a lot of questions, and hopefully they will follow up with and contact you in the future. Our next session is the keynote presentation by Catherine Scarf. So please find your way to that session by using the session selector on the feed loop page, and we will see you there.